Among the Romantics, there was one figure who loved to laugh at poetry itself, Thomas Love Peacock. Born in 1785, Peacock was not only a poet and novelist, but also an official of the East India Company and above all, a satirist with a sharp wit. He was also a close friend of Percy Bysshe Shelley, and their intellectual exchanges shaped some of the era's most important critical debates. Peacock is best remembered for his comic novels, especially Headlong Hall and Nightmare Abbey, Asked in Exam. These novels often feature characters seated around a table, humorously debating the major philosophical and cultural questions of the age. Through satire, he dissected literary fashions, mocked intellectual pretensions, and entertained while provoking thought. But Peacock's most famous critical work is his essay, The Four Ages of Poetry, from 1820, The Asked in Exam. This is the very text that provoked Shelley to write his famous Defense of Poetry. In Four Ages of Poetry, Peacock takes a utilitarian approach, ridiculing the romantic belief that poetry has deep cultural importance in an age of science, commerce, and reason. He mocked the early bard as nothing more than a flatterer of kings, always ready to celebrate the strength of the king's arm, being first duly inspired by that of his liquor. By equating royal praise with inflated financial credit, Peacock cleverly likened poets to modern speculators. Peacock's satire cuts both ways. As critic M. H. Abrams pointed out, he mocked poetry from a utilitarian perspective, but he also mocked the very belief in utility and the march of intellect. In other words, his essay questions the romantic elevation of poetry while also exposing the absurdity of reducing all culture to practical usefulness. Among the critics of the Romantic age, William Hazlitt stands out as one of the most distinctive voices. Born in 1778, Hazlitt combined a conversational, lively style with philosophical depth. His criticism was never dry, never detached. It was passionate, engaged, and full of personality. Hazlitt's public lectures on the English comic writers became one of his most celebrated works, later published in book form. And yes, this title has been asked in exam. In these lectures, he offered witty and insightful portraits of dramatists and humorists across the English tradition, proving that criticism could be as entertaining as it was thoughtful. Hazlitt's essays often reflected his own life and passions. His piece, My First Acquaintance with Poets, is a perfect example. In it, he recalls meeting Coleridge for the first time, describing him memorably as the only person who answered the idea of genius asked in exam. This shows us Hazlitt's approach. He judged literature not by abstract rules, but by the living presence of imagination and vitality in a writer. But Hazlitt wasn't only a literary critic, he was also a philosopher. His essay on the principles of human action is another important text asked in exam. Here, he explored the foundations of morality, arguing that imagination is central to human life because it allows us to extend sympathy beyond our immediate self-interest. And here comes a line you must remember. Hazlitt once declared, "Poetry is not a branch of authorship, it is the stuff of which one life is made," asked in exam. For him, poetry wasn't a narrow craft. It was a way of being, inseparable from passion, perception, and existence itself. When we think of the most beloved essayists of the Romantic age, one name shines warmly: Charles Lamb. Born in 1775, Lamb became famous not through grand epics or philosophical systems, but through the intimate charm of his essays. Writing under the pen name Elia in the London Magazine, and yes, this has been asked in exam, he developed a style filled with wit, nostalgia, and gentle humor. His collections, Essays of Elia, published in 1823, and Last Essays of Elia in 1833, remain landmarks in the tradition of the familiar essay. These writings mix personal reflection with literary appreciation, showing that criticism doesn't always need to be rigid or abstract, it can be deeply human. Among these essays, My Relations is especially remembered. It is a tender sketch of his family life, written with the humor and pathos that became Lamb's signature style. And yes, this too has been asked in exam. But Lamb was not only a personal essayist, he also wrote significant literary criticism. In his essay on the artificial comedy of the last century, asked in exam, Lamb made a bold defense of Restoration comedy. While many 19th century critics condemned it for immorality, Lamb argued that the stage was a space of artifice, separate from the ethical demands of real life. In this way, comedy deserved to be enjoyed for its style, wit, and artistry, rather than judged by moral standards. Among the essayists of the Romantic age, one name stands out for his dreamlike intensity and deeply personal voice, Thomas de Quincey. Born in 1785, he became one of the most original prose stylists of his time, blending visionary imagination with ornate rhythmic sentences. His most famous work, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, published in 1821, was groundbreaking. Pause here and note this, it was asked in exam. In this book, De Quincey inaugurated a new kind of writing in English literature, the confessional mode. It combined autobiography, psychological reflection, and opium-inspired visions into a prose that felt both intimate and hallucinatory. Later, he expanded this mode in Suspiria de Profundis and explored history in works like The French Revolution, asked in exam. But De Quincey was not only a confessor of dreams, he was also a thinker and a critic. One of his most dazzling essays, The English Mail Coach, gave us two unforgettable sections, The Vision of Sudden Death and The Glory of Motion, asked in exam. These passages dramatize terror and exhilaration in a way that makes prose read like poetry, filled with psychological depth and stylistic brilliance. De Quincey drew a famous distinction between two kinds of literature, the literature of knowledge and the literature of power, asked in exam. Knowledge, he said, instructs like a rudder. Power, on the other hand, moves us like a sail or an oar. This image captures his conviction that the highest writing doesn't just teach, it transforms, stirring both imagination and emotion. His historical reach was also wide. In The Revolt of the Tatars, asked in exam, he narrates the dramatic migration of the Kalmyk Tatars across Russia, showing that even history could be written with imaginative force. Let's look at two very different figures of Romantic criticism, Leigh and Robert Southey. Both were central to shaping the literary debates of their time, but they approached poetry and culture from opposite directions. First, Leigh Hunt. Born in 1784, Hunt was an essayist, journalist, and poet. More than anything else, his legacy lies in the role he played as a supporter of new Romantic voices. As editor of The Examiner, Hunt gave a platform to young poets like John Keats, Percy Shelley, and even Lord Byron. Without his advocacy, their early work might not have reached the public with the same impact. Pause here and note this. Hunt's essays were conversational, graceful, and deeply accessible. He wasn't concerned with heavy abstract theories. Instead, he wanted to cultivate taste, sensibility, and openness to new poetry. His writing blended appreciation with judgment, always aiming to nurture the Romantic spirit in readers. In this way, Hunt becomes less of a grand theorist and more of a mediator between poets and audiences. His legacy lies in defending originality, celebrating imagination, and creating space for Romantic literature to flourish. Now, contrast this with Robert Southey. Born in 1774, Southey began as a radical thinker but later turned toward conservatism. He became Poet Laureate in 1813 and held the role until his death in 1843. His criticism often appeared in the Quarterly Review, where his essays reflected his seriousness about morality and social order. For Southey, literature was a national and didactic force. He praised works that promoted virtue and stability, but fiercely attacked those he saw as immoral or destabilizing. Here's the line you must remember. Southey condemned Byron's works as monstrous combinations of horrors and mockery, lewdness and impiety, asked in exam. Byron, never one to back down, responded with sharp satire. exposing the cultural and political tensions that divided the Romantic generation. Pause here and reflect. This clash between Southey and Byron wasn't just about poetry, it was about deeper questions. Should literature challenge society or uphold it? Should it be revolutionary or conservative? Southey's criticism shows us how tightly bound Romantic literature was to debates over morality, politics, and cultural authority. So, when we place Leigh Hunt and Robert Southey side by side, we see two very different models of criticism. Hunt nurtured new voices with openness and warmth, while Southey sought to defend tradition with seriousness and moral force. Together, they remind us that Romanticism was not a single unified movement, but a battlefield of competing visions. That wraps up section 4 on Romantic criticism. You now have everything at your fingertips: lesson plan, videos, PDFs, PYQs, revision notes, and classroom materials. Keep revising, stay consistent, and use your Diary Notes Hub to track progress. Ready to keep learning? Download the app now and continue your journey with us.